Hi guys, it's Natalie from Feasting on Fruit with a crazy colorful chocolate layer cake recipe. There are quite a few steps to this one, but it is totally worth it. This cake is delicious. I'm going to start with a chocolate cake recipe. It's a little different than any of my chocolate cakes before, but it's probably my favorite one yet, so I really hope you try this cake. For one of the 6-inch cakes, you need 3/4 cup oat flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/4 cup of cacao or cocoa powder, 1/4 cup of coconut sugar, 6 pitted medjool dates, 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and 3/4 cup of non-dairy milk. I used almond milk. You're going to start by blending the milk, the dates, the vanilla extract, the cocoa powder or cacao powder, and the coconut sugar. This only makes one of the 6-inch cakes that you need to make the whole layer cake. I did it in 2 half batches because I only have one 6-inch cake pan, but if you have 2, then you can double all of this, and you'll see that written out in the recipe on my website if it's a little confusing. Seriously, I wanted to stop right here and eat this with a spoon because that just looks so good. But anyways, keep going with the cake. So the dry ingredients, I'm just combining the oat flour and the baking powder in a bowl. And then I'm going to add the wet ingredients to that and whisk it all together. This recipe is not entirely fruit sweetened like my everything free cupcakes. It's half dates and half coconut sugar, and I think that balance is what makes this cake so good. The dates keep it really moist, but not having all dates sweetened keeps it really light and fluffy. The texture was awesome, the taste was awesome, and it's still completely oil-free and gluten-free. It's amazing. So in my little 6-inch cake pan, I put a little coconut oil on the sides and a piece of parchment on the bottom to make sure it comes out super easy. And I'm just going to put my batter in here. My oven is already preheating to 325. Off to the oven for about 25 minutes. To check it for doneness, just lightly press the center, and if it bounces back, then it is done. Once the cake is cool, let it cool for at least an hour. Then you can flip it out of the pan, and now we're going to slice it in half. I have this cool little cake slicer thing. If you don't have this, you can use a knife, but just be really careful to try to keep it level. This thing works pretty darn well, and it makes it super easy. It's kind of like a cheese slicer, but used for way more delicious things, like cake. So now I have my 2 little halves, and you're going to repeat this whole process again, so you end up with 4 layers. So set the cake aside for now, and let's get to the frosting. The frosting is entirely colored with fruit. I have lots of freeze-dried fruit in different colors, and it makes for a pretty vibrant frosting. I'm also using some unsweetened vanilla cultured coconut milk or coconut yogurt, whatever you want to call it, and some powdered sugar. You can make your own powdered sugar with cane sugar in your blender, or you can buy organic powdered sugar. And I know this recipe has a little more sugar than most of my recipes usually do, but sometimes you just want to go all out. And if you'd rather a more fruit sweetened frosting, you can layer it with my chocolate date frosting, which would be delicious as well, and I'll leave a link to that in the description. What is shown in the video is only about half as much frosting as you're going to need. I ended up having to double this. I didn't realize how much it would take to get all 4 layers frosted. So I started with a 1/4 cup of coconut yogurt, and I went 1 cup at a time. It ended up being about 3 cups of sugar. It might be a little more, a little less for you, depending on, measuring inconsistencies and that sort of thing. But just adjust it as you need. You want it to be pretty stiff, otherwise it's gonna slide off your cake and just like drip down the sides, which you don't want, but you want it to be spreadable still, otherwise you're gonna ruin your cake trying to spread it. So between 3 and 3.5 cups is probably good. As you can see, I had some help here, which was really nice because it gets pretty hard to whip, which is what you want. You want it to be thick like a frosting, not like a glaze. So now to create our fruity colors, you're going to blend up each of the freeze-dried fruit powders individually in a really dry blender. If your blender has any moisture in it, it will clump and be a mess to clean and just a mess in general. So we have blueberries, strawberries, and the yellow can be peaches, mangoes, pineapple, any of those work. I kind of had a blend of all of them. So you're going to take about 1/4 of your icing and use your first color. You might not need all the 1/2 cup of fruit, but you can just adjust the color to how you like it. One of your colors is going to repeat, so you're going to use 1/4 of your frosting with one color, 1/4 with another color, and 1/2 with your repeating color. My repeating color ended up being yellow on this cake. Although I ended up really loving the purple frosting, so if I were to do it again, I would probably repeat the purple because that was super pretty, but I ran out of blueberries, so oh well. So now we have all of our frostings and they are lovely spreadable consistencies, and I'm going to start layering the cake. I did include all of the layering process because it can be a little tricky. You want to make sure you don't put the frosting too far to the edge, especially on the bottom layers, because it will start to mush out the sides when you add the weight of the next layers on top. So don't go too close to the edge because it will push out on its own, especially on the first layer. I had a little bit of that issue with the yellow, but just don't do what I did and keep it closer to the center. Then you're just going to keep layering and be really careful with the spreading as well. You don't want the cake to come up and get in the frosting like little crumbs like that. That can be ugly. That happened to me a little bit. I'm not really a pro at this, but it's fun and still very tasty, regardless of whether there are cake crumbs in your frosting. You can see the yellow smushing out the sides a little here. That's why I say keep the yellow in the center. Keep the first layer of frosting really far into the center. But I just cleaned it up with a knife around the edge on the bottom and it looked fine in the end. I recommend that you serve it immediately or refrigerate it so the frosting will harden and not mush out, like I said. And here's the finished cake. I know this recipe is a little more involved than most of my recipes, but it really is worth it because of the fruity fun factor. And it's kind of birthday perfect. If nothing else, just try the cake itself because it is so good. For the full recipe all written out, you can go to feastingonfruit.com where you will find a lot of other high-carb, low-fat recipes as well. Thank you for watching. Bye!